Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Absolutely. Always ready to explore some interesting ideas.
Today we're going to be taking a look at something a little bit sensitive, maybe?
Oh,
We're going to be looking at the potential connection between political ideology and mental health,
okay. Yeah, that's a really complex area.
especially among young people.
Yeah.
Our main source material today is an article by Greg Lukianoff called The Mental Health Consequences of Social Justice Fundamentalism.
Published where?
It's on his Substack.
Okay.
And it really caught my eye right away with this statistic. 57% of very liberal students reported feeling anxious, lonely, depressed, or overwhelmed at least half the time.
Wow.
That's a big number.
Yeah, that's significant for sure.
So that really got me thinking, and Lukianoff kind of frames his whole article, around this idea of what he calls social justice fundamentalism.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So, I mean, how would you define that?
Well, I think the way Lukianoff uses it, it's essentially this worldview that really emphasizes identifying and addressing systemic oppression, like, oppression based on race or gender or sexual orientation.
So, I mean, it sounds like that's about recognizing and fighting injustice, which sounds good on the face of it.
Yeah.
But he calls it fundamentalism. So it's like, where does it cross the line from, being a good thing to being, I guess, a negative thing in his view?
Yeah, and I think one of the main arguments he makes is that this worldview, like even though it can come from a place of good intentions, it can become a little bit problematic when it incorporates what he calls cognitive distortions.
Okay, so what are cognitive distortions?
Yeah, so think of them like thinking traps, these patterns of thought that can really negatively kind of warp your perception of reality.
Okay.
He points to things like catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, and blaming
Gotcha.
as examples of those kinds of distortions.
So it sounds like he's saying that if you're constantly viewing the world through this lens of oppression and focusing on like negative societal forces,
Yeah.
that could lead to, more anxiety, more despair, like those kinds of feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the core of his argument. He suggests that this framework, this way of looking at the world, can lead to feelings of powerlessness, and an external locus of control,
Okay.
and that those things can be detrimental to mental well-being.
And that's where this data from FIRE,
Yeah.
the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, comes in.
Right, their 2024 college free speech ranking.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And that's where we get that 57% of very liberal students reporting poor mental health at least half the time.
Right.
And you compare that to 34% of very conservative students reporting the same.
Right. And so he's making a connection there,
Yeah.
saying that this difference could be, linked to this prevalence of social justice fundamentalism, as he calls it.
And this trend, it's interesting, is actually consistent across genders. So female and non-binary students are actually reporting poor mental health more often. And it's liberal female and non-binary students, the very liberal ones, that are actually reporting the worst mental health overall.
That's really interesting. And so how does Lukianoff, now that we've got the kind of the framework of his argument, how does he bring this to life? Like, how does he make it real for people?
Yeah, so he uses some specific examples. He mentions Kimi, Lucy, and Saeed
Oh, yeah, from the documentary.
from the documentary The Coddling of the American Mind.
Right.
And so he uses their stories, as he presents them in his article, to kind of show how this social justice fundamentalism, as he defines it, may have actually negatively impacted their mental health.
Okay.
He also cites examples of DEI training sessions from Nellie Bowles' book, The Morning After the Revolution.
Uh-huh.
And he suggests that these can actually have unintended negative consequences on women's mental health.
Interesting. Does he acknowledge, I feel like anytime you're dealing with something this complex, there's got to be some limitations, right? Does he acknowledge any limitations to his analysis?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, good.
Yeah, he actually emphasizes the need for further research, like a lot more research, to really fully understand this complex relationship between ideology and mental health.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? There are so many factors that could be at play.
Right, exactly.
And it's not as simple as just saying, this one ideology is bad for your mental health,
Yeah.
And he also actually, I think it's really important, he brings in a counter-argument from John K. Wilson,
Okay.
who suggests that, maybe conservatives are just less likely to report mental health issues because of societal pressures or coping mechanisms like religion.
That's interesting.
Right. Like maybe there's something else going on there.
Yeah.
And then Wilson also, he raises the possibility that maybe people who already have pre-existing mental health issues are actually more drawn to liberal ideologies.
Okay. Because of maybe they have a greater sense of empathy for other people suffering, or, there could be a variety of reasons.
That's a really interesting point.
So it's a good reminder that correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right.
And there could be many, many factors at play here.
So it sounds like he's not saying that he has all the answers, but he's highlighting a potential connection.
Yeah.
And definitely encouraging a lot more research and discussion around it.
Absolutely. He's raising questions and pointing to areas where further research is needed, to really understand the nuances of this.
It's a nuanced approach, which is good to see.
It is, especially when you're dealing with something as complex and sensitive as this.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like Lukianoff, is kind of advocating for a more nuanced and balanced approach to promoting mental well-being among young people.
Yeah, for sure. He's not saying, let's throw out social justice altogether.
Yeah.
He's saying, let's be thoughtful about it.
Yeah. Let's be, promote open dialogue, critical thinking. Those are some of the things he really emphasizes.
Instead of shielding young people from, difficult conversations or opposing viewpoints, he's saying, we should encourage them to actually engage in these conversations.
Yeah, for respectful debate,
To challenge their own assumptions.
Yeah.
And develop the mental tools to really navigate a complex world.
Right. And he also emphasizes teaching young people mental habits that promote resilience and well-being,
Okay.
rather than fragility and fear.
He talks about anti-fragility.
Yeah.
Like the idea that we can actually benefit from challenges and adversity.
It's kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But he's suggesting that by, becoming stronger and more adaptable
Right.
in the face of stress and uncertainty, you can actually be better equipped to navigate, the complexities of life.
It sounds like he's advocating for a more robust approach to mental well-being that recognizes the importance of actually facing challenges head-on rather than trying to avoid them.
Right, exactly. Like avoiding those difficult conversations or, shielding yourself from opposing viewpoints. He says that might actually be counterproductive.
So instead of striving for these perfectly safe and comfortable environments,
Right.
we should be, like you said, encouraging, respectful debate, challenging their own assumptions, developing the mental tools to navigate a complex world.
According to Lukianoff, yeah, that's what we should be doing. And I think a big part of that is exposure.
Right.
To diverse perspectives, even ones that we might disagree with.
Right.
It's crucial for growth and learning.
It seems like he's trying to find a balance between empathy
Right.
and critical thinking.
Yeah, compassion with resilience.
He seems to believe that equipping young people with the skills and the mindset they need to navigate the world with confidence and well-being is essential.
Absolutely.
Regardless of their political beliefs.
And, it's really interesting because, going back to what we talked about earlier, that data, right?
Yeah.
Showing that possible correlation between certain ideological beliefs and mental health outcomes.
Particularly among college students.
Right, right. And then you have the whole concept of, social justice fundamentalism.
Yeah.
Which, again, he's not saying is inherently bad.
Right.
But he's saying it can sometimes lead to those cognitive distortions that can negatively impact mental well-being.
But to be fair to Lukianoff, he does acknowledge the limitations of his analysis.
Oh, absolutely. He does.
And encourages further research. He even, like we said, he presents counter-arguments to consider.
Yeah.
So he's trying to be nuanced in his approach
to
this really complex issue.
It's refreshing, actually, to see that.
Yeah.